Great. So from time to time, we do actually have people who can arrive a little later. That's perfectly fine. So I understand people are finishing work and they're doing whatever. We've got 10 participants that have logged in, and some are off camera. And when we go into the breakout rooms, I'll invite that over for people to be able to do that. So we'll start off the night. And so I'm Vicky Hanna. I'm actually the training program manager for HADA, and I'm going to be running your class tonight. So tonight's class is because Deb is away off with flu, but I wanted to let everybody know, because I've had a couple of phone calls through the week, and I thank everyone for those, to just let you know that you are going to get a change of trainers. So tonight, every class has got a completely different trainer in there. And the reason why we do that is to give you an opportunity to work with people who are currently working in the sector and will bring something different to that space. So the reason why I chose this instead of my usual, and I sit there 3 nights a week, is because I work in the court system. I work in both the district court and the federal court, the family court and the Supreme Court. And I do that as a court support advocate. So it's a really good unit for you to understand as a worker in this space, what is your legal requirement and what is your ethical requirement. And sometimes those lines get a little blurred. So we'll do a little bit of housekeeping. I'll share my screen with everybody and we'll jump straight in. So there absolutely will be time for everyone to ask questions, but I'll tell you when they are and when we can actually jump in and do that. Just going to take those notes out of there. Right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful, thanks so much for that. So tonight we're doing CHCLEG001, and this is a core unit. So a core unit is something that crosses over more than one qualification. So tonight we're in the class of Certificate 4 in Mental Health, and every single trainer at HADA has the qualification that they deliver. So work legally and ethically will mean something different to everybody. So we'll unpack that. My name, who's running the class tonight, so I'm a fellow with the Institute of Managers and Child and Youth Mental Health. I sit on several boards, both state and national as well. So we write public policy, we prep everybody ready to be able to go and have funding applications and drive what the service models are, wherever the government of the day is wanting to put that money. So that's my email address below, which is a link. And I understand that every learner is getting a copy of the PowerPoint slides. So I am hoping that you're finding those. Just put a few faces up here so we can have you join the class. So we are recording. So I just want you to be really mindful, please, of anything you've got in the background. Just put a blurred recording in the background, because there's quite a lot of learners who are enrolled in the course who never come to class. So they might only ever watch the recording as well. So usually my classes do the acknowledgement to country. Would someone like to do that, or would you like me to do that for you tonight? Are you used to doing acknowledgement and sharing it? Great. Would someone like to do the acknowledgement to country for us tonight?
I don't mind reading if you need someone to read.
Sorry, was that a question? Yes.
Yeah, would you like me to read? I don't mind reading.
Yes.
Is that,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
no problem. Okay, so in the spirit of reconciliation, HADA Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of the nation and the traditional custodians of the land of which we work. it seems to be blocked out. It says something and study.
Work, live and study. I think I'll
Okay,
just
work,
move the
yeah, there's a smudge or a little patch, something. Work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We
Thanks so
pay.
much. Yeah. Sorry, Yasmin.
Oh, there was one more line. We pay our respects to all First Nation people, acknowledge elders past, present and emerging.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. So when we're in the sector, pretty much every meeting that we're ever going to be sitting in will have that for us. So I'm going to let in some late learners. Great. And just if I could get somebody to turn their sound back off, their microphones, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Yasmin. So I sit on Tarrabalan Bunda, which is in Queensland, often referred to as Bundaberg. We'll do our housekeeping. So cameras on if you're in class. We are recording, but if there's something that you would prefer and not be on camera, especially for people who sit in that neurodivergent space or have some anxiety, please turn your camera off. So that you're most comfortable in your classes. Microphones on mute so that we're not picking up any extra sound which will impact our recording. We will have class break times. We'll have 10 minutes, 2 10-minute blocks, and class participation when we're not looking at our screen, just pop your hand up if you can. You're not interrupting if someone else isn't talking, so you don't have to apologise at all. Just try not to speak over each other, the same as how we would conduct ourselves in the workplace. Respectful relationships is when we come into this space, we are adult learners and we speak the same way as if we were in the workplace with our peers, and our language needs to be safe for people to be able to hear it. So in 3 states and 1 territory, psychological safety also sits around our workplace health and safety. So we're really mindful about our language, our conduct, our tone when we're working with our clients, but we owe that to each other in our workplace as well. No smoking or vaping on camera, but you're working from home, so please be comfortable. As long as your camera's off, that's okay. A trigger warning or a response that's adverse. So some of the topics that come up can be quite triggering. It may lift you out of your window of tolerance. It may be that it leaves you fairly heightened, or it might be that you're feeling low. I want you to just use your reflective practice around this and make sure that if you're traveling okay. We'll do a check-in in a moment as well. If there's something that's bothering you after class, then please call 13 11 14, which is Lifeline. Or if you're First Nation, then call 13 Yarn. Both of those numbers are very used to students unpacking any kind of thoughts that they're struggling with. So in the sector, a lot of people have got a lived experience and it's highly valued in the workplace. So outside of Hader, I run a staff of 58. And we have lots of peer support workers in our team. But it does mean that sometimes their mental health and well-being can be easily triggered when we're dealing with certain clients or certain topics in our day. So be really kind to yourself, just take that break, look after yourself in between. And if you're struggling with something, I encourage you to just make your phone call and ask to speak to somebody, so you can have that one-on-one. So I did field a lot of one-on-one calls from this particular class last week, and it's great. It's been really good to get your feedback and have an understanding. So I thought before we jumped into our unit, I might be able to do a little bit of unpacking based on the feedback that I got from some of the learners in the class. And I did want to open this up. Now, I am recording this and I am inviting you to ask any questions that are relevant around this, but I won't take any complaints in this class, nor will I have anybody take over the class on other matters that aren't relevant. But this is relevant because it sits around your rights and the legal and ethical framework in the workplace. So, Kim, do you mind if I mention your name?
That's fine, Vicky.
Thank you. So Kim gave some great feedback, which was really helpful. And it appeared that there may have been a couple of steps along the way that she wasn't aware of. And I'm hoping, Kim, that we resolve some of those in our one-on-one.
We did.
Great, terrific. So Kim knows that every learner at Hader gets 1 hour each month with a trainer if you want. Some don't need it. Some are very self-directed learners, and that's great. But if you do need that, then you absolutely can book that in. So I understand that the booking system, I'm here, but keeping the camera off due to being in hospital. Thanks, Mahalia. I hope you're okay. So in this space here, we usually can, during the breaks, I don't take a break, but during the breaks, I like to open it up to frequently asked questions so that I'm around for learners. We don't talk about other units when we're in this particular unit. But what I got from Kim was that she didn't realise that maybe you can book that in. And if you are struggling to get someone in, it's a quick email. So Karen started, she was in class before 6 and she just booked in. It's that easy. My email is on the first slide. You can use that email and you can book me in. There are 2 trainers that work full time, but if you're struggling to get hold of your trainer, then that will be because they only work at nights or they don't have a lot of availability. So you may have a different trainer next week. It'll depend on what I think the roster looks like and what the classes actually need at the moment. So, but the continuity that you have of the support is there from the moment you enroll. So we usually cover in our classes frequently asked questions, and I like to do that in the break. So I'm really happy to take your questions during that period of time. But during this class, it's your last session of this unit, and it's really important that I know that you've got your questions answered to be able to complete your assessments as well. Kim, what were some of the other things we were able to unpack? That was
I remember. Yeah, I'm just trying to think, Vicky. I mean, I know that you said it's different trainers. I got that. I got the part about booking, which was great. Pretty much anything I think I spoke to you about, you answered, and I finished the conversation getting a better feeling of knowing, because obviously I wasn't informed of a lot of things. So it was good.
Okay, great.
Basically, I wanted to know you answered.
Yeah, great. And then from there, Kim just organised study support on a regular basis. What does that look like? How can I get that help? So 30 minutes is there, but a lot of learners don't have that time because they're working and the time isn't available. So I sit in every Saturday and almost every second Sunday doing role plays. And so for a lot of learners, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do my role play if I haven't got somebody in my role play with me. And this particular unit does have role plays. So there's 2 role plays actually, task 3 and task 4. And these are great ones too, because it gives you an opportunity to do it. We'll do one in the breakout room. I'll pop you in there. Now, we don't record the breakout room, but when we do go into the breakout room, you've got a specific task to do. Then you have to have a spokesperson. Then you've got to come back with 3 key learnings and 1 unexpected learning. So in your breakout room, you're actually doing I guess a kind of run through of what that's going to look like, ready for your role play. Can I just get a feel though from the group, who has already completed your assessment with this unit? Not yet? Okay. Who feels ready to do role plays? Not yet? Okay, we've got some work to do tonight. What do you need to be able to complete your assessment or do your role plays?
I'd like to see an example of what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
I've just got no clue. I don't even work in the field. I'm in the courts as well, but you know,
Yeah.
I don't
No, but we've
know
got
what
a
it is.
picture for you too, Karen.
Mm.
So there, we've got some people who sit in classes who are already working in the sector, but we've got some people who never have and are looking to go into that. So it has to meet everyone's expectation. So how do we do a role play? We'll do one. We'll do one all together tonight, and then we'll have another practice run when you jump into the breakout room. But also, 7 people this week have said, I've never done a role play yet. I don't know what it looks like. So I've got 19 people turning up for a role play on Saturday, but only 4 are going to do it. But the others are all going to observe. Just let me see one in real life, and what does that look like? And that invitation is there for you. So, okay, that's great. And all people have to do is just say, I'm stuck, I need it, and I'll invite you to a role play. And the other learners don't mind. You will be off camera, so you don't freak everybody out, where they've got a gallery and an audience, but they will go through that. So on page 1, it had my email address, and you are very welcome to contact me. Myself and one other trainer run the role plays, the majority of them. So we do over 100 every fortnight, just so you know. So there's a lot of people who don't have someone they can do that with, or they don't feel comfortable doing that hypothetically as if somebody is in there. Good question, Brendan. So it's VIKI. So how you spell my name there. So it's VIKI at hayderinstitute.edu.au. And I'll make sure that I put that up for you and make that available. And then in the break, if someone says, I want to be, I will just pop you in as a guest. And I've actually got a couple of role plays, different ones. So we've got the communication one happening on Saturday. And then, of course, we've got, I think we've got case management as well going on. It doesn't matter so much what the unit is. It matters that you get to see a role play. What is it that we ask? And then once you're in there, you'll go, I didn't know it would be that easy. I didn't know it'd be that much fun. And I didn't know I'd get that much help when I was actually in there, because it's meant to be a coaching session for you. But you can use your 30 minutes every fortnight to have a trainer be your client and do the role plays with you if you haven't got somebody.
I think it's more when you say role play, a lot of people think it's I think only talking to you the other day, I sort of got a better understanding, so I felt a little bit more comfortable with it. But if I hadn't spoken to you, and they keep saying role plays, and I'm like, nah, it's not me. It's not going to happen. But yeah.
So you get about 14 role plays in a Cert 4. About 4 of those you're required to do in real time with your assessor. Okay. Some of them are groups, and when the learner says, Vicky, I'm ready, or you just get in touch with us, I'm ready to do my role play, we will coordinate a group for you. It may not be from your class, but if you've got a group of you and you all send an email, I will book you in. But you need to have, if you need extra people, if we haven't got them, we still go ahead, I grab another trainer and we make up your group for you. Yasmin, question.
Okay, you just mentioned if we don't have a group, then a group would be made up. About 3 weeks ago, I thought we had already had groups, but this is where I guess I've been a little bit disconnected, because I was placed in a group 2 with 3 other people in this class, I think 2 of which are here tonight, and I haven't really connected with anyone, and I'm not sure what's going on. Should I do another group or just say?
You don't need to organise the group. The trainers and assessors do that. But if you've got 3 or 4 people in this class who want to do that and they've got availability, it'll get booked in and everyone gets an invitation and a Zoom link. And we record it for you.
If I if I say, okay, I'm ready on whatever day, then will I be ditching the current group? Because I just thought we were already in a group. That this is my
did
dilemma,
see
and this
that.
is my dilemma.
Thanks, Yasmin. But you were never booked into a group because there was never any Zoom link sent to you, was there?
No, I guess
So
it was
it's
just sent in the chat.
It's
Yeah,
nothing out of chat gets booked. So
right.
So,
Okay.
but you're absolutely welcome to contact each other outside of class. That's you're adults, you know, you're networking, you do that. But class is not, where we put down our private emails and confidential, because this gets recorded. It breaches both the state and the Commonwealth Privacy Act by putting that information up there, because then it goes out to other learners and we don't have your consent to do that.
Okay, I think I remember you tried to say that in the email that we exchanged, because I just looked at it and I realized that it was you that I was talking to right just now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if I just send a more current email in the next couple of days saying, okay, I'd like to be placed in a group, then you put me in one and, I don't know, book in a time.
Or you can talk to you. Yeah, absolutely. Or you can talk to your peers, Yasmin, and you can be the person that contacts, but I can't give you somebody else's email. Only they can
Oh,
do
for
that.
sure. Yeah. I've got a couple of them anyway. So
then what you do is we give you opportunities to say, we've got 3 dates, 3 times, which one suits you best of all?
okay. All right. So
Okay. So
no worries.
We're having a discussion. And the other thing is, as you make a request and you send it through in an email, no, please don't use the Facebook group because it won't get you booked in. But I mean, talk to each other, anything you want to do outside of class, but I won't take bookings from a Facebook group. Okay. So, yep.
Oh, I think she did, how I understood it was just to contact each
so
other.
That's actually being recorded. So we don't put chat in our recorded message unless it's actually relevant to the topic that we're covering. Okay, thanks anyway. So personal chats, fine. Do that in break when I'm not recording classes. That would be wonderful. Thanks. The same as what we would do. So catch up on the weekends, things that you do outside of Hader, 100% do that when I'm not recording, because it's going out. It's being stored on a third-party device as well. So from here, you just email, say, I want to do the role play for CHCLEG001, task 3, or task 4, and allow yourself time. If you say, Vicky, I actually want to do both of them, I am ready. So don't book unless you're ready. Okay, because you'll only get 30 minutes to do your role play from start to finish. Then we record it and then we send that recording to you, and it expires in 7 days. So you need to be able to upload that. We'll give it to you on a document, and then that document will be signed off by the assessor in real time, and you can upload that into your portal as part of your evidence. So, sorry, I don't know your name. I've only got something on the screen.
Jess, sorry. Jess is my name. I just wanted to ask, is it better if we actually sit in and watch a role play first before we go, yes, I'm ready to do it? Because I want to do it, but I'm then a bit nervous because I have no idea what I'm sort of in for. So is it best if we sit in and watch one first?
It's a very individual choice, but I've got a lot of people who prefer to do that, and I invite you to do that. So if you email me and say, Vicky, I was in your class on Wednesday night, I would love it if I could get an invitation to attend a role play. And if you don't mind which role play it is, we can't tell you whether it's exactly that one. But if you say, this is the next role play that I would like to do, depending on where your studies are, if I can pop you into one of those, I absolutely will.
Sounds good, because I still have to do the communications one, but I'm up to date to do the legal one as well. So
yeah. So if you're after CHCLEG001pt, task 3 or task 4, task 3 you need 4 other learners. This Saturday at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I am running that. and lots of people are jumping in to have a look at that. So the only way to get into that is to send me an email and say, hey, I was in your class on Wednesday. Could I please get an invitation? And you will get sent a Zoom link on Friday to join the group on Saturday.
Did you say you do Sundays as well? I have a daughter who does gymnastics from 11:15 to 1:15.
Yep. So if that's not the one you can be at, we'll just tell you the next available, but we're not running that one on Sunday. But
That's okay.
that is
Yeah.
definitely running between 11 and 1.
Okay.
But I do think that there's another day coming up, and it may be the following Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, so we probably do 5 different units on the day that we work and do role play. So it might be CHCLEG001pt. We actually need 2 hours for that because everybody has to rotate, and then we give debrief, and then you've got to give the feedback and fill in the form. But to be ready to do that one, to just come in and observe 100%.
Yeah.
And if I can get consent from the class, then I'm really happy to send you a copy of their recording, if that's helpful.
That'd be good too.
Yeah.
That's
I've just got to get their consent, and we've got to
Yes.
put that into the recording so that they know it's only going to be shared with a HADA learner.
Okay.
If you can't be there, then we can offer that for you as well. But
Oh,
the
lovely.
best way is to communicate. Just get in touch with someone by email. So the easiest person, if it comes to me, I'll just delegate it over whoever's on roster. So we've got a team of 8 trainers. And everybody's everywhere. So we deliver 17 classes through the week.
Okay. No problem. That sounds good. Thank you.
I think there's 4 or 5 classes being run tonight in all different quals. So thank you for those questions. They're great. I'm hoping that answers some of those questions. Just remember, you're an adult learner and responsible for how you are traveling through that. So if you need support, that's great. But if you don't, and you're a very self-directed learner, then that's okay as well. That just means you're working your way through your tasks. But if you've got a trainer and you want to email them and you've got a question about it and you don't quite know the answer to that, just say, hey, Vicky, I'm working on CHCLEG001. I don't know, question 5 in task 2 has got me completely stumped, and I'll unpack it for you. I'll unpack that for you, and then I will come back to you individually. So because everybody will be at a different rate. We have new learners that start and you might have brand new learners joining your class next week, because we enroll new learners on session 1 of every new unit that comes up. Never session 2 and never session 3 or 4. It's always the very first one. And on session 1, your trainer will be in that space at 5:30. So from 5:30 to 5:55, that is for new learners, or for any learners that want a refresher on what do I do, how do I get in touch with everybody. Sorry, I'll just get rid of that chat. How do I get in touch with everybody? How can I ask questions? Who can give me that individual learner support as well? So in the break, we'll unpack a little bit more. Just have a think about that. But let's jump in and get some of our work done tonight. So what I'm hearing back from the group is that nobody has completed this unit and the assessment work yet. Nobody has done a role play yet for this particular unit. Okay, so that's great. So what we're going to do as a group right now, we're going to do a role play. So just for fun, and I'm going to give you, as a group, I'm not putting you into breakout rooms, we're going to have a class discussion, and then we're going to unpack that, and then I'm going to send you into a breakout room, and I'm going to put you into a breakout room with 3 other learners. One person will be the spokesperson, come back and say, this is what we saw, this is what we heard, this is what our action plan was around it, and I'm going to give you one scenario. So it's going to be a youth mental health worker in a non-clinical setting. Okay, so we have a lot of our clients depending on the ages of them. And I'll give you the scenario, plus you'll have 2 options. And I'm interested and curious which option you're going to take. One might feel more around the legal framework, and one might feel a little more around the ethical dilemma that we have. And especially in that space when we're dealing with young people, because their risk-taking behavior often can fall outside of what is lawful and what is unlawful. And as a worker, when do you report? How do you report? And who do you report to? So we've got our overarching guidelines, which we must follow. That's the legal side of things. And then we've got our underpinning, which is what is the policy and procedure in the scope of your role. For some of you who are working in this sector, you'll know that you'll follow your policies and procedures, but those policies and procedures must also be lawful. No employer can ask you to do something that is outside the legislation. So if someone says to you, oh, don't worry about that, you as a worker, someone who works in the community sector, have a practice standard that you must follow. So if you do something outside of that, or you're feeling pressured, or you think that perhaps your job is on the line if you don't, then that puts you in a very difficult position. But we talk then about how this impacts and who it impacts. So you are, as a worker, it can impact you. It can impact the organisation's reputational damage. It can impact the client, and it can impact the public perception around, do they trust? Okay, so some people will struggle with doing mandatory reporting, and there are times when you must. Any child under the age of 18 is mandatory reporting. But your policy and procedure could be your first line manager is who you take that to, and you have met your responsibility by going to your supervisor. So you'll have something like an incident report to fill in, or it could be around your code of ethics, the code of conduct that you're required to do in the workplace, and that's your practice standard. Okay, so here's our scenario. We're just going to have a play with it, and then I'm actually going to send you in to role play that in small groups. One will be the spokesperson, one will be the client, and one will be the worker. Okay, so when we're doing a role play and we're assessing you, the other people in your role play, that's great, but they're numbers and they're not being assessed. You are being assessed. So what are you being assessed on? You're being assessed on, did you do the privacy and confidentiality disclaimer at the beginning of that? So has anyone done an intake and an assessment where they've said the privacy and confidentiality with a client? No? Have I got any sector workers in the class? Not yet. Okay, that's all right. So we do this for every client, even if you saw them every week for 10 years, it would make no difference. You must start with this because you haven't got consent from the client unless you do. So we start every conversation with, look, I just want to let you know, Yasmin, that it's great to have you here today. Before we get started, I've got to let you know that everything you say to me is private and confidential. There's nothing that we discuss in here that will be shared with anybody else without your consent. The only time that I would have to share that would be if I thought you were at risk or others were at risk, and that's about your safety, and that's a priority for us. Do you understand? And Yasmin's nodding, so I'm getting non-verbal. Okay, but what that's doing is I'm getting consent from Yasmin, and I'm also giving Yasmin the opportunity to make a decision on how much she shares in this conversation. So she might go, oh, I don't know, I'm really worried. If I tell her about I'm sleeping in the car and the kids are there and then haven't been going to school, she might call child safety on me. So that's for Yasmin to make that decision around whether she wants to tell me that information. Okay, how we engage in that conversation will depend on whether she trusts us enough to be able to do that. When I'm assessing a role play, I'm looking at your style, how you engage, how you say those things. and then whether I think that you're going to be able to establish a relationship where people want to be able to work with you. So some people use a script. They feel really comfortable if they go, I say this, they say that, I say this, they say that. Okay, that's when you might give that script to somebody, a family member who you've got there when it's not looking for a group. It's okay if they read off the script, that's fine. But what's really important is if you engage them, only you are being asked. So I've got some learners who are dyslexic and have very heightened anxiety. They can't do role plays with other people. So our reasonable adjustment, and it's very individualized, I just said, okay, so what can you do? Well, my mum can sit at the dining table and she can read out the questions, but she doesn't want to be on camera. And I'm going, okay, cool. We just got the back of mum's head. She's got a script in front of her and she's going to ask those questions. So he needed to have 4 people in the room, but he didn't have 4 people because that would heighten his anxiety. So our workaround was he put 4 stuffed animals at the desk and he was talking to them. And seriously, 2 other trainers looked at it as well. And we all thought that the llama was talking to us. We just thought this was the most engaging recording role play we had seen for ages. He had to facilitate a group. Yeah, I thought so too, Abby. It was great. And he paused. So of course there was nobody there, but what he'd say was, that's a really good point you've made, Llama. I'm actually going to take that on board. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Oh, look, I'm sorry, Turtle. That sounds like we've got to discuss that. Let's catch up after the meeting because today is about workplace health and safety, but it is important and I do want to hear you. You've got time after the meeting to come and meet me in my office. And he managed it perfectly because in that scenario, which is CHCLEG001pt, then we had to do collaboration. You had 4 people from the same workplace. Sorry. And I'm going to keep dropping the chat out. I'm sorry, guys, but it's being recorded and nobody's going to answer them. In the break, definitely we will do that. So it does interfere with the others because they're not involved. So when we're having a discussion, we're fully present. Sorry, Sib, I want to keep you in the class, but if you keep dropping it into chat, I'm going to have to pop you out. So no chat unless we're on a break. Thanks. So in this space that you're about to do, here's your scenario. So your scenario is you are a youth worker. One of you will be the youth worker. Your youth worker discovers that a teenager in the program that you're working in your organisation is involved in illegal activities outside of the program hours. So you, as the youth worker, you've built a strong rapport with the teenager who confides in them about these activities. The youth worker is now faced with a dilemma. What do you think the dilemma is for the youth worker? Who's got some ideas? Hugh, no? Oh, Abby.
The legal and ethical standpoint would be their mandatory reporting.
Yeah, it is. Because there's some risk involved in that, is that usual practice for vulnerable young people who might be involved in an illicit drug use? Do you think that that's common or do you think it's uncommon?
Sorry, is it common for youth
Young people to take substances?
Oh, yes, I do believe so, depending on which environment they're in,
Okay.
especially if it's like in an out-of-home situation where non-clinical youth workers would be on site, but there's no real parental role governing or guiding them in a way that it would standardly be. So they do take higher risks, I believe.
Yep, sure. And it is quite usual for young people to have risk-taking behaviour. So we want to frame it around safety. Karen, did you have a question? No, you're good.
Sorry.
Okay, great. So option 1 is report the legal illegal activities to the authorities, which aligns with your legal obligations, which Abby raised, but risk losing the trust of that teenager and potentially the other young person who shared that information with you. So they shared it because they were struggling with it. They were having a dilemma. I'm worried about them and I need to tell someone that I trust. Now you, as a worker, have that information. What do you do with that? So that's your legal responsibility. So this could lead to them facing legal consequences and possibly severing ties with the support system that the youth program that you as their worker is providing them. So you're in that space of prevention anyway, but this is something that impacts their mental health and their well-being and the psychological safety of the others in the group. So it is mandatory reporting, but your internal policies will be, I need to report that as an incident, and my line manager will be the one that puts the action around that. So for a lot of the police, as a first responder, a lot of police will bring you in and they will ask for you to be able to say, will you work with them in the community? Yes, we will. And to do that, they'll put them in a drug diversion program rather than go down that legal pathway. But the only people who can make that decision are the police, the ones who are officers of the court already, because it is unlawful. So we don't look the other way, and that's the ethical dilemma as well. The other option is keep the information confidential, maintaining the trust and the ability to influence the teenager positively. However, this choice could mean neglecting your legal responsibilities and potentially allowing the teenager to continue engaging in harmful behaviours. So when we jump into that space, we'll have a look at it. Brendan, question?
Well, it's the dignity of risk, isn't it? As opposed to the trust.
It could be the dignity of risk under the age of 18 falls into mandatory reporting, but over 18, we're not mandatory reporting unless we think that there's a risk to self and others. So the relevant legislation that would govern that would be the Child Safety Act. Okay, in your state or territory, and any of those updates around it. So the police have the power to put someone on a drug diversion. So I run a youth residential house, shared, and it is harm minimisation is the model. So some residential programs are zero tolerance. So we are that step up or step down. So people step up from the refuge where it's zero tolerance, and they step out into harm minimisation to be part of that. So if we've got someone, so we take young people nobody else will take. So in that space, so legal aid might say they're going to detention if they haven't got stable accommodation or housing security. However, they present with coexisting needs. So they've got homelessness, they've got mental health issues, and they manage their mental health by smoking weed. But they've been moved from crack or ice, and they're now reducing down. So they must be engaged with the drug and alcohol service provider to be able to come into our program and attend that. So when you go to a residential program and you've got comorbidity, where you've got mental health and substance misuse, it's very difficult to decide, I want to work with that person around their mental health, but I can't work with them until they have the substance issues better managed. So what we can't do is take someone who's on 8 litres of red wine, 2 4-litre casks a day, and think that we're going to be able to say stop. It's actually a risk for their health to stop. So that needs to be managed clinically, and we're not clinical workers. But who are you working with? Are you working with that young person around their substance misuse, or are you working with their mental health? And this is where you'll fall into that grey area. So under the age of 18, mandatory reporting you must, but it could be done inside your policies and procedures. Okay, so in your workplace, when you're going into your learner portal of first access, you have a code of conduct. you have a template, you have policies and procedures that tell you. Now, that's a great platform, but it is difficult to sometimes find the exact policy that they're referring to. If it's an incident report or a trauma incident, then you've got to go looking for that, and you've got to be able to do a case plan. So can I just get a feel for this class, because you're on session 3, your final session for this unit. Who's been into the First Access portal and logged in there? Yeah, Jess, you have? Okay, Abby, you have? Karen, you have? Okay, great. So, and Brendan.
I couldn't log in.
Okay.
Didn't have a login code or something.
Okay. All right. So when you email me, I'm going to send you a document, because you will need that at least 25 times throughout your qualification. So if I give you a document that's got the link and the login and the password, and you save it in a folder, you've got a resource that you don't have to stress yourself out with. Is that okay?
Could you please?
That's the First Access one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. Sorry, question.
Just repeat the question. What have we done? All I've done, I've been told to download the resources, and all the resources aren't there, as in this. Yeah, so I don't actually even understand what you're asking.
What resource are you looking for, Sip?
For the current module, like our assessments for this, the
Okay,
resources
so
for our assessments.
would you like to send me an email so that someone can assist you with that?
Sure.
That'd be great. And then you'll get that individualized support. So if it is a tech issue and you're struggling getting your resources out of your learner portal, then we need to assist you tech. But if it's you're not sure how to navigate your way around your learner portal and where to get your resources from, we can show you. But we're talking about your templates for this particular unit, where you need to log in to a platform that's called First Access. So
Okay.
it's when you're working in the sector, you'll have your own intranet where all your policies and procedures and your control documents live. So when we're doing legal and ethical framework, then we need to follow the policies and procedures. So which policy and procedures do you think will cover legal and ethical framework? So Kim, I'll come to you in just a sec. So anyone want to have a guess? I've already given you one. It's your code of conduct. That's one for your legal and ethical framework. Mandatory reporting would be another in this one. Okay, so if you haven't been into First Access and you email me, then I will send you a document that will get you into First Access each and every time. It's a super easy way to do it. Okay.
I've just seen the username Hayter Institute and the password in there.
Yeah, but if you keep it, then it saves you having to jump in
Yeah.
each and every time. So,
Yes,
so the
good link.
login is the link and it sits in your instructions. But if you are in that space where Sib is, who doesn't know how to find these things in the learner portal, that will be a real struggle for you. So I don't want you to stay stuck. Like, we all get stuck, but don't stay stuck. Just reach out. Contact either, there's 2 trainers. So Helen, Helen, at hayterinstitute.edu.au, or myself, VIKI, at hayterinstitute.edu.au. We work full time. We do most of the role plays for everyone. And a lot of our other trainers might only come in at 5 o'clock and finish at 9, and then they might not be back till next week. So when you go, I can't want to talk to my trainer, we have trainers who can answer every question around every scope. All we do is we bring up your learner page and we can see what work you've been doing. And if you're not progressing, then we will offer you support. Okay. So we have people who will do every fortnight. Some don't need it and some go, yeah, look, I can put that question into an email. So if someone sends an email, goes, Vicky, I'm stuck with question 5, no clues which unit you're working on. But if you say I'm stuck with CHCLEG001, task 2, question 14, then I know exactly how to help you. Okay, or I don't really understand what they mean. or I'm not really sure about the role play. So those who haven't been in a role play are going to send an email and say, Vicky, can I jump in and watch a role play? Okay. And if you've got a unit there and you're ready to do a role play, then we will try and get you into that one as well as an observer. So just know though, your units will not be opened up until you have completed role plays. So if you go, oh, I want to keep going on my tasks, you won't be able to get them because you've not completed a unit. And in mental health, as you go out to work placement, that gets automatically flagged at around 50%. But if you've got unfinished tasks in your unit, it will never get flagged. So a lot of learners are going, oh, well, I'll just do all of these ones and leave the role plays till the end. Then it doesn't get flagged. And it takes us about 8 weeks to find you a place close to where you live, unless you've got a place of your own that you want to do your work placement, and they'll be your host employer. So because everyone's got rolling starts, I've got some people who are finishing their quals on the 30th of June and only have 2 or 3 role plays left to do. And they have done their work placement, and there's 5 or 6 other units that you've got to do when you're in work placement as well. So as a Cert 4, you're a frontline worker, sometimes first responder, sometimes in triage, all non-clinical, but it could be anywhere between crisis support or working in a community organisation with people who come and access that support. About halfway through, a lot of the learners will say, Vicky, I want to start working. And I'll say, great, what's your resume look like? And then we start getting you ready where you're talking the language around being able to be a mental health support worker. And we start looking about what's available, how to have that language, and which core units they will take from someone who says, I'm currently undertaking studies. So at about halfway through, Hader will flag that you are ready to start looking at going into work placement. So you're going to need to be matched to a place that gives you access to clients who have coexisting needs. So it might be that you'll go into an aged care facility, but you could be working with someone who has dementia. You could be working with someone who has Alzheimer's. You could have a veteran who suffers from PTSD. So sometimes we go, what am I doing in an aged care facility when I'm going to be a mental health worker? Sometimes there's coexisting needs that get presented in that space. Okay, so when we look at this role play and this scenario, it's just for fun. You are a youth mental health crisis support worker, and your target group is young people 12 to 24 years of age. So they view that, so 12 years of age is youth. Do we have young people diagnosed with mental health issues at the age of 12? Definitely we do. They sit in the neurodivergent space. So I'm ASD, ADHD, late diagnosis when my children were diagnosed. So 4 children, all diagnosed ASD, ADHD. I've got 8 grandchildren, and 6 of them are all diagnosed ASD, ADHD. So we work in that space. So neurodivergents are now working in the space where they'll go into areas. So they're big on making sure that we've got diversity in the workplace. And now it's about inclusion. So if people have lived experience or they've got a diagnosis, then it is lawful to hire them. It's unlawful to discriminate against somebody because they've got a disability, or even if they had a pre-existing condition. But it gets quite tricky. So you need to be mindful that your human rights as a worker, and when we started, I said, so there's your relationship with your peers, there's your relationship with your clients, and there's your relationship with your employer. And you have the right as a worker to be safe and supported in the workplace and be provided with the resources to do your job. Now, when we talk about inclusion, or someone says, I've got a mental health issue or I've got a mental illness, when you're doing things like mental health first aid, there's 4 streams that you can do as mental health first aid. A lot of orgs will go, we want you to come in and have your first aid, but then when you're a mental health worker, they'll want you to come in with your understanding around trauma-informed care, the hope and healing side of things, suicide intervention work, and working around inclusive practices in the workplace. But can people with a lived experience work in the sector? Absolutely, they can. In fact, they're much sought after, but it still has to be safe. You might read a document and it's triggering. You might hear a conversation, it's triggering. It needs to be safe for everyone. And that sits under the Human Rights Commission. And that is in one of your assessments for this unit. What are the legal frameworks and legislations that we must conduct ourselves under? Brendan, question.
Sort of question, more of just adding to what you're saying. It's a very delicate balance. My partner works as a suicide prevention worker with a mental health diagnosis, and it's very high risk, high reward. She's very transparent with her managers and they're very on board, which when she has to hand over a case, if it's too close to home. But at the same time, she's also someone who a lot of people will go to for, helping kind of talk about their client. And she builds rapport with them so easily, this specific area of person. And it just brings her the world of joy, as well as she sees the client flourish. And yeah, it's amazing to see. She also kind of suffers from the transference, counter-transference, I think it's called.
Yes.
And that's when she's, and she's able to have supervision and take a step back. And they're really supportive with that. It's really amazing to watch that kind of navigate and see how she's built upon that. It's awesome.
That's great, Brendan. Thank you so much for sharing. So her safety at work is really important. And if she's able to do that work, then that is a culture in the workplace that's professional and safe to do so. So thank you so much for that. It's a really difficult and challenging role to do suicide intervention work. And we can become trauma bonded if we have a lived experience. And if we don't have good community practice standards, how we manage ourselves, how we manage others, then it can sneak up on you when you least expect it. And it happens when we're fatigued. So when we do the housekeeping slides in the beginning and we talk about call Lifeline 13, 11, 14, you can unpack. If you're feeling study stress, a lot of uni students will call and say, look, we covered a topic and it really got to me, or I'm feeling like I'm just stressed and I haven't quite got traction yet. They will work with students, but most students who haven't had a one-on-one with a trainer and assessor will stay in that I am stuck space. So when you reach out, and it's the hardest thing to do is to reach out for help. But once you've done it, you go, gosh, I didn't know that would actually open up a pathway of support for me. So when we're looking at our clients, we're looking about seeking help and feeling safe to do so. So psychological safety it's under workplace health and safety. You can have a psychological injury. The fact that we can't see it, now it sits under the legislation. So there's laws to look after discrimination. You can't be excluded because you've got a pre-existing condition. If you have a lived experience, then it's reasonable of management to provide resources and safety for you to do that, especially when they know that about you. They should have safe work practices because they have to have them for clients as well. Okay, so how do we look after ourselves is with our reflective practice. So what I'd like to do, and this is what chat gets used for in classes, and you'll see this start to happen with your trainers as well. So this space here is, okay, so Sib, if you've got a question, send it through by email and someone will answer that question for you. So what I want you to do in this space is I'll put up everyone in the meeting. And on a scale of 1 to 10, what I want you to do is a check-in. So this is self-reflective practice before we jump into the role play. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 says, I'm going to check in. We do this at the beginning, at the end of every class. And this is about how are we traveling as a human in this space. So I'm checking in as a solid 8. It's Wednesday, hump day. Okay, it's been good. Got some things done, but still got the rest of the week, and I'm working on the weekend. So I'm checking in it as a solid 8. So a 1 says, look, I'm here, and that's incredible because you turned up. A 5 says, I'm kind of here, I'm still making up my mind. Why is this trainer telling us things differently that I've never heard before? And why is she going to only ever conduct a class that's 95% professional and 5% personal? Because that's how we conduct ourselves in the workplace. And that's where you are here as learners. 7's good, not great, but 7 could be a high number or a low number. 10 is, I am absolutely rocking and rolling, and move aside, Vicky, I'm going to run the class tonight. So, so somewhere between 1 and 10. Now, for 25 years, every single day that I have been a first responder and work in a sector, I have kept a reflection journal, and I encourage, if you are not doing that now, you absolutely need to be doing it and start. So they all look like this. Just get a really cheap book from Kmart exercise books and keep them all. And down that page, what I want you to do is, in the middle, I want you to draw a line, and on one side I want you to put positive signs, so a plus, and then the other side a minus, which is a deficit. And do self-reflection on how you are going. Today, here are the things that went really well for me. Here are the things that I really found I was stuck with. Is it a deal breaker or is it a speed bump? Give it a number. And on the bottom, do some reflective notes. Okay, you might listen to somebody in class and you go, look, I really like the way that they approach that role play. And when we went into the breakout room, I was able to use some of the tips that Vicky said are open-ended questions. So there's a framework we do it. We're not going to just jump in and talk. I'm actually going to show you what to say and how to say it when you're actually in your role play. Okay, because this is your toolkit time. When you're in class, this is about us teaching you how to do the job and how to pass your assessments. That's where our conversations will always go. And your new trainer that comes in when you've got a change of trainers, they come with a great background and rich conversations can happen. But if you're not progressing with your assessments, we're actually failing you in our duty of care, because the conversation is not there to help you with your assessment work. You invest your time and your finances on yourself to walk away with a qualification that will get you work or improve your opportunities for a promotion and where you're actually working now. So we're sending out great workers. So where we're up to at the moment is, I want you to work with this. This is how you do an open-ended question. And this is the formula. This is what we look for when we are assessing you. So you've got to start with who, what, how, when, where, and why. Okay, open-ended questions all start with that. So when you're working with a client, you're going to say, what was happening for you when that was going on? That's what I'm going to listen for in your role play. If you've got a closed question, that means they can only come up with a yes or a no answer. Now, there's times we need that. So when I did intake and assessment, oh, Yasmin, you were my role play person, and I did the privacy and confidentiality, you nodded and you gave me nonverbal consent, but we were in the same room and I was watching you. Sometimes we can only get consent over the phone, so that'll be verbal consent. We have to write it in our file notes. So we're doing a scenario with a young person. You must keep your file notes for 27 years. That is the legal requirement when you're working with a young person. Why? Because often they will not disclose an incident or a traumatic event until they're an adult. So they can either make a statement with the police and still not be pressured to go to court but they get the statement while that information is fresh in their mind. But for 27 years, and that sits under the Child Safety Act. That's the legal and ethical framework that you're working in. So why do we do this particular unit? So that we can find out, listen to a story, and like Abby said, you know, there's a legal mandatory reporting if that teenager discloses to you something that they said in confidence, but on some level they actually wanted to tell Abby, hey Abby, so-and-so is doing, like, I'm worried about them. That's not a breach of confidentiality. That is a risk assessment. What supports can we wrap around this young person? Highly unlikely that the police will charge them. It is unlawful, but your duty of care sits around what wraparound supports. You may walk into court with a young person where they no charges, no record, you're going off to drug diversion. But they're the consequences of the choices that people make. So your work could put you in that space where you go to court and support that person, manage their anxiety, deal with that as well. So you will often have people who have a dilemma. So the yes, no, that closed question, I needed to get a yes or a no from Yasmin. So Yasmin, do you understand that I need to report? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, thank you. So I can go client stated consent. Now, if now I want to take Yasmin's information and I want to refer her on to a counsellor outside of our organisation, then I need written consent. And not just broad either, not just, oh, Yasmin, I need to be able to refer you on. I actually have to say to Yasmin who I'm going to refer her to, and I have no right to discuss the content of our conversation. I'm referring on for the counselling support, and then it's up to Yasmin to decide what she shares with the next person. Nothing about me without me. That's our community practice standard. So Yasmin shares something, there's some risk and safety that sits in there, not my story to tell. Yasmin's giving me consent to send her to a GP, and what I can share with the GP, I have to say to Yasmin. So Yasmin, what I want to do is I want to just tell the GP what you've told me is that you're a little bit worried that you're just struggling with your sleep. Let's see if we can rule out any physical thing, any clinical thing, which we can't do, we're non-clinical workers. If there's something else there, and if you are struggling with your anxiety, then let's see if we can get them to do a K10. How would that be, Yasmin? Would that be okay if I refer you on to a GP that bulk bills who does the mental health assessment?
Yes, that would be okay, but I'm not sure what a K10 is.
Okay, I can tell you what it is and they'll explain it more. So a K10 measures your mental health.
Okay,
if you make an
that's fine.
appointment with a GP, we make a long one, a 45-minute, which is hardly any GP will give you that, 10 minutes and rotating. But if you get a long appointment, I want a mental health assessment. So people in Australia with a Medicare card are entitled to have 6 free sessions with a psychologist or a mental health nurse and under your Medicare. And that's called Better Outcomes, Better Health. And then you can ask for another 6 inside 12 months. And you can work with somebody around your mental health. Now, I don't need to know. Thank you for being in my role play, Yasmin. I appreciate it. I don't need to know what Yasmin talks to the GP or the psychologist about for me to do my job as a mental health worker. That's entirely up to Yasmin whether she chooses to share, because my role sits inside a scope and I have a position description that says what my work is. I'm not a GP. I'm not a clinician. I'm a mental health support worker. So I work inside the guidelines, and that's my legal and ethical. And then we refer out. to someone who is a subject matter expert, which could be a GP, could be a psychologist. The GP might go, look, you know what, I'm going to get you into a psychiatrist. I think we need to have a look at it. Now, your GP can prescribe medication if they believe it's situational. If they think that external things happening in your life, that you're under pressure and there's overwhelm and it cannot be managed with cognitive behavior therapy or deep breathing or going to yoga or doing Tai Chi or doing mindfulness colouring in, and it sits in the clinical space, they're going to refer you on to another person. So the next time Yasmin comes back and it's like, hey, Yasmin, haven't seen you for the last few weeks. How's everything going? Did you keep your appointment? Yeah, look, I did. They're really good. You think you're going to keep working with them? I am. That's it. Yasmin keeps that conversation absolutely. Yes, a K10 can only be done by a GP. And
Or a
there's
psychologist.
Oh, yes, once you're actually there. The K10 will get you to a psychologist. So you can get a psychologist if you pay, but if you want to get it for no fee, you've got to go through your GP and get the referral. Thanks, Abby. That's true. So if you can afford the fee to go to a psychologist, then you absolutely can ask for that. I'd like to speak to someone, but to get in under the public system or to get that no fee, then you can actually have a referral. Sid.
So I'm a peer support worker and I do K-teams all the time and RASDSs.
Yep.
And I'm not a GP.
No, but you can
And
start.
that's part of my role.
Yeah, but you don't do clinical work?
No.
No, great. So who supervises you?
Who supervises me? Well, as a peer support worker, I am out on my own, basically.
Who do you report to, though?
My mentor and my boss.
Yep. And what qualifications do they have?
My boss is the acting CEO of the company and my mentor has got a number of things under her belt.
Yep.
But she's not a GP either.
Oh, no, allied health professionals. So
No.
Anyway, I'm not going to argue with you in the class, but if you're doing a K10, guaranteed you've got a qualified person who is supervising you. You will not get a job and say, I'm going to start doing intakes and assessments on people in a K10 and nobody's supervising me. So a lived experience is great, but somebody else will do the work. You're doing the admin side, asking questions, putting in the number and handing that to somebody else. So if you like, wait for the break. I'm happy to have that discussion with you, but I can tell you that it's clinical work and no non-clinical person can work in the clinical space. And if they are, that's a great conversation for legal and ethical framework. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to, I've done our online in our group. So Yasmin's been in my role play. Thank you very much. And then Kim did a little bit when we first started, but I'm going to pop you into groups. So when you go in, you're going to be in a group of 3. One is going to be the youth worker. One is going to be the client, the young person who came to you in confidence about their mate, right? You've got a good relationship with this young person, but you're the worker. Okay. And the other person is just going to give feedback. They're going to come back out and they're the spokesperson and they're going to say whether those conversations were who, what, how, when, where, why. Now, the yes and no, yes or a no is a closed question. And so a closed question would be consent, like I needed to get from Yasmin. If Yasmin said, I'm not sure, which she did around a K10, your GP will tell you what a K10 is before they refer you over under better outcomes, better health, all right, to get those 6 free sessions. Or you might get them, someone else will do it and they'll get someone like Sib who'll do the admin side of it, but someone's actually going to do the work. So the framework and the legal and ethical framework is no person who is a non-clinician will do clinical work. It's unlawful to be working outside the scope. And if ever there's an incident, the recourse around that is that the organisation can be sued if the client is treated in a way that breaches their human rights or their child safety rights or their Discrimination Act, which absolutely has no cap on compensation. If you discriminate against somebody with a disability, you personally can be sued, because you've got to, as a worker, as a paid employee or a volunteer, have an understanding about what your legal and your ethical requirement is. So if you work outside the scope of your role and you do that intentionally and you knew it, then it's you that goes to court, not the organisation. If your employer said, don't worry about that, I'll get you to do that, then it's on the employer. But you cannot absolve yourself under the law as a worker. So you sign your employment contract, you say, I have these qualifications, you have an employment contract that says you're in a contract, and when you first started, you did your policies and procedures. So you cannot absolve yourself of like, well, I know, but you know, we do it like that here. You can be personally charged, not just as an employee, but as a person. And there is no cap to compensation if you breach someone's human rights around disability or discrimination. You're not protected by your employer if you knowingly act unlawfully. So that's part of your legal and ethical framework as well. So people need to have supervision. So I'm hearing Brendan say that's the safety, the culture, the wraparound supports for an employee, but the organisation knows that they've got someone with a lived experience or a first responder. They need to make sure that their risk management is absolutely first class. Right. So I'll drop into chat, which is what our chat is for. So we have a young person. Are they going to be, will we make it tricky and put in mandatory reporting and make them under 18? Just to make it, yeah, okay. All right, we've got 17-year-old, male or female or non-binary. Does it matter?
No.
Does it matter? When you're in your room, just.
No.
Yep,
No.
so Sid, make yours male, wherever. And then when you're in your group, if that's what you want it to be, if you are the client, okay. So so we're looking at illicit drugs. However, people can be affected by prescription medication as well. So we look at drug and alcohol or substance misuse, but the wrong medication can also have an effect. Okay, and then someone has disclosed about another person. Do you, as the youth worker, report, or will you provide early intervention, prevention strategy? Okay. Don't worry about my spelling. Okay, so I will stop recording. Sorry, Karen, is it?
Just the young person, the 17-year-old, that is your client?
Yes, the young person came to you as the youth worker.
Yeah.
And they just told you something about their friend. They trust you. You've built rapport. You've got a great relationship, but it's about another person.
Mm.
And because this unit is legal and ethical framework, we're looking at option 1, we go down the mandatory reporting legal pathway, or option 2 is the ethical dilemma that you've got here.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so what are you going to make sure you absolutely do? So what must you do? And what would you like to do? And does it have to be either or? Could it be both? So I want to hear what your intake is when this young person, so it might start off something like this. Oh, hey, Abby, oh, really worried. You look worried. What's going on? Okay, here's my what. No, just my mate, like he's just out of it. He's got a whole lot of pressure. And I've just noticed he's smoking way too much weed at the moment. He's getting pretty aggro. Oh, when did you know? Okay, so whereabouts do you think this happens? Why do you think he's struggling at the moment? That's how we're going to work it. And that's what I'm looking for in your role plays. Can you engage? Can you do active listening? Can you do that non-judgmentally? Are you collaborating with them? Are you getting them to help you make the decision? If I'm in there, I'd actually be working with that young person. What do you think we can do to help your friend? I'd bring them in because their friend, they are in their support system. They leave the program at the end of the session. Everyone's finished doing graffiti art or repairing push bikes, whatever it is the program is. They go and the friend is more likely to be in that support circle for that young person they're talking about. So if we help that young person, we're doing preventive work and we're helping that young person deal with which bits do I report and which is helpful, or which bits are going to get somebody into trouble and make it worse. We're helping them do some critical analysis. And because young people sit in a low EQ, simply because they haven't developed yet, low EQ sits with blame, justify, deny, and quit. Now, that's not something exclusive to young people, but it's in the language. Oh, it's always their fault, blame. Like, oh, well, I only did it because they justify my behavior or my choices. That wasn't me. He's just full of it. That never happened. Complete denial. And quit can be anything to shut down, do flight, but internally because their trauma response, all the way through to suicide. That's quit. So when we're working in this space as a mental health support worker, we're assessing the risk, we're weighing up the consequences, which will be the way to go or not. And that's exactly the same when we get into your other role plays, which I'm going to help you with tonight as well. Okay, but let's just get used to trying it on for size, the who, what, how, when, where, and why. Just get a feel for that. I've given you the scenario. Young person shares information. The client is under 17. You're working in an organisation. You've got a legal and an ethical dilemma. What are you going to do? One will be the youth worker, one will play the client, and one will be the spokesperson that comes back and goes, this is what it looked like. This is what it sounded like. This is how they managed it. This is the outcome that they had. And I think we actually came up with a good strategy. Okay, so that's what spokes. Our breaks, sorry, my breaks actually happen at 7:30. So, and then again at 8:30. I'm so sorry. In the housekeeping, it does that. But are people feeling stuck? Do you want to, you've got 6 minutes. I can give you 10-minute breaks now, if you like, and you can wrap your head around what I'm going to, as soon as you come back, you're jumping into a breakout room and doing your role play. What would you like? Let's give me a thumbs up, go on a break now. Come back at 7:37. I've got 1 thumbs up. Got to reach a consensus. 2.
I was just no. But all good. 7:30 is fine to me.
So thumbs up or not, Renee?
Oh.
Sorry. Yep, I've got 2. Yep. Okay, we're going to go on a break. We'll come back at 7:35. I'm not going on a break, by the way. I'm here if you've got questions. So we'll see you at 7:35. Fantastic. Going to pop you into a breakout room. You've had a break. I've answered some questions. We've gone overtime with those questions. I'm not answering any more questions tonight. All of you have got my email. I've done the question time around frequently asked questions. You've got Hayder's email and you've got my email. Any question you've got, please do it that way, because the class belongs to not just you guys, it belongs to everyone who's watching in recording time. Okay, so let's jump in. I'm going to pop you into a breakout room. Okay. We have 16, so we've got 15. Okay, so we're going to have 5 breakout rooms, 1 youth worker, 1 mental health support worker, and 1 person who's observing. Okay. $10 minutes. Right. Okay, terrific. We're back. So I'm going to send everyone on a break very soon, but we're just going to do, we had 5 rooms, so we're going to have 5 spokespeople in 3 minutes or less. Just 1 sec. In 3 minutes or less, as if we were doing an elevator pitch. Okay. So the spokesperson will deliver their feedback within this framework. What you heard, what was stated, why the decision, was it option 1, the legal path, or was it option 2, the ethical? That was the work that you did. And then I want you to give an unexpected learning. What was your aha moment when you were in there? Okay, who'd like to go first?
I don't mind going first.
Great, thanks, Cass.
So we were a little bit confused at first on how the whole thing was meant to unravel. So we had Mandy. Did you want me to just explain what happened? Is that what I'm doing?
You're explaining it within this framework as if you're handing over some information to another worker.
Okay. Okay. So Mandy called through to the to a helpline, say kids helpline. Today she has a friend named Sarah who's 14 years old. She's worried about Sarah's behaviour at the moment at school and out of school hours. She's been a little bit absent. Her behaviour's changed, and Mandy actually witnessed Sarah in the bathrooms at school inhaling some sort of white substance. She didn't want to question her about it because she was afraid of confronting her about it, didn't want to scare her off, but she's very concerned about Sarah. Sarah's parents are recently divorced and she's just lost a close pet. So she's just really wondering what she can do in regards to being there for her friend, or sort of help that she can get for her friend, because she's very concerned.
Okay, all right. So thank you, Cass. That's good. So when we talk in role plays and come back to each other, we speak legally, because your notes could be subpoenaed for court. Absolutely everything you write as a worker, someone can subpoena those documents. So we get used to talking in this language, in this framework. What you heard, and you gave us that. What was stated, you gave us that. You went through no decision making as yet. So we've got 2 more parts to do. And thank you for saying that you found your way once you got in there. But what you did come back with was who it was. So that's our who, what, how, when, where, and why. Okay. You said who. You said what was happening. You kind of even put in there the why. And then we're doing an intake and an assessment. And the important thing was the young person reported an incident. Sarah had external issues, complicated grief, and ambiguous loss. Okay, so that as a mental health worker, that's what we're looking at. So the only lens we've got is gathering the information to make sure that we are following our legal ethical. Your file notes could end up in court. All right. So
was that all correct? Did we,
we're just missing which
what
path.
we,
Which path did you go? Did you go the legal path, mandatory reporting, or did you come up with wraparound supports? For
it was more wraparound supports because it was a phone call to a helpline. It wasn't a face-to-face direct contact with a person.
Okay, right. As a 20-year veteran on Lifeline, it's still mandatory reporting.
Okay. We weren't sure because we didn't know if we were to mandatory report, would we have to get Sarah's details or Mandy's details to report?
Yep.
So what if we weren't able to get Sarah's details?
So here we are. Ring, ring. Hey, Cass, what's up? I'm your supervisor. Why don't you run it past me and say, I'm a little bit stuck. I've got a caller. Okay, where you go? What do you want to ask me?
Okay, so I've got Mandy on the phone and she's concerned about her friend that's using illegal substance. Do I report it? How do I ask for details? How do I confront the situation without scaring her off?
Okay, so the other information is like there seems to be a bit of risk, harm to self or maybe others. There's been a lot going on for this young person. What do you want to do here, Cass? Would you like to maybe, because she's still on the phone, Mandy's still on the phone. Mandy, just let me check with my supervisor and just see what we can do to help your friend, because it sounds like you're really worried about her.
Okay.
And at the moment, Mandy might not even be her name. It's on the phone, but you
Yeah.
already have Mandy's number.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so if it's Kids Helpline or it's Lifeline, we've got your number anyway. We can get somebody there and do a wellbeing check on you effective immediately.
Okay, so potentially they could send someone to Mandy.
Well, they could, but Mandy's not the one in distress or high risk. She's talking about her friend. So we reflect that back. So I like where you went. You went around the ethical because you need more information and you do not know if it's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're sitting in the ethical, but you might change your mind and review that as you capture more information, which is what you were doing was intentional interviewing questions, which you nailed.
Okay. Thank you.
Like where you went, softly, little bit more information, build rapport, establish trust with Mandy. It might not happen in this call, but she might call back and she go, they were really good. They listened. They weren't saying anything. But what do you think you could do at the moment, Mandy, to help your friend?
Yeah. Well, Mandy was very well supported and she was quite happy to speak. She was made very comfortable on the phone. So.
Amazing. So here you have a young advocate on the other end of the phone for her friend.
Okay.
Yeah. Strength-based, give a feedback. Mandy, that's amazing. You're a good friend.
Yeah,
right?
she did get told that.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cass. All right, another spokesperson. Who have we got? Jess?
Okay, so my notes might have been taken, I think, maybe from the wrong context.
No,
I was
no
looking
right
at
or
how the
wrong.
youth work,
Yeah.
how the
No
youth
right
worker
or wrong,
was
Jess. Jump in.
communicating.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to cutting out.
All right.
I was looking at more how the client and the youth worker were communicating and how they were dealing with the situation. So the client found that the youth worker was quite open and made the client feel comfortable enough that she was happy to explain what was going on with her friend who was dealing with drug use and was having quite a tough time. The youth worker was asking the right questions about her friend, and obviously she was quite concerned. The youth worker asked if a few strategies I think they could come up with together. Maybe if she wanted to tell her friend if she's willing to either come and speak to somebody or even just to speak to her friend. The youth worker was happy to pass on any details if she's comfortable enough to come forward. I thought she was quite the client was has her own issues as well. So she felt very comfortable in opening up to the youth worker. So she wants to pass that message on to her friend that there is help there. So if she does need it, that she's there to support her friend, and there is, support from higher up or people that can help her get on the right path.
Right.
The youth worker made her feel like she'd done the right thing by her friend and by herself, by reporting what she's seen and how her friend's feeling. Yeah, I just thought she was, so I looked at it as that way of how they were communicating to help the friend and where they can get to the end result with helping the friend. But we didn't have names or.
No, it's okay. You're just sharing information, de-identifying, no names, all good. So Jess, where your group took it and the feedback that you've given is that you stayed in the intake assessment space because it was more important to establish trust and build rapport first. Remember how I said it takes time? Just because they're there doesn't mean, okay, I ask you questions, you give me answers. You could sit there and say nothing just to find a space where they come back to that window of tolerance and regulate, because you're seeing and hearing that young person also had some other issues that you weren't quite sure. She wanted to establish a relationship. You made sure that you had unconditional regard, collaboration, coming up with ideas together. It was safe, it was supported, it was supervised, knew there was a youth worker guiding, and it was strength-based. Perfect. Excellent. Great work. And when I'm assessing, that's what you get marked on. Well done. Okay, another spokesperson. Who have we got? 5 rooms. I've had 2 spokespersons. Did we delegate spokespeople?
So
yeah.
Our group, we started off, Kate and I, thinking it was just us two, and then Hamid was added halfway through ours. So we were going on a similar path to Jess and her group, and more or less the same outcome. We didn't quite get to the end decision. It was more just building a rapport with our client, as well as establishing that trust and providing the support to our client, Rosie.
Okay,
Based on her concerns.
Right, stayed in the initial intake and assessment. That was my tech glitch. Hamid turned up and then he wanted me to send him back into room 5. So to put him in room 4 to then getting me back into room 5. So sorry about that. It was like, hi, I'm here and now I'm gone.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. So initial assessment, establish trust and build rapport. Now, do you think you're going to get anywhere with anyone if you haven't at least done that groundwork? So however long you need to stay in that space, there is no quick race to win. If you're doing a role play and that's part of your assessment, it's like, because they were so trauma affected, if that's how you intake and assess, how you interpret the scenario, there was other things, and I felt the trust was the most important to establish in that space. So even though the role play might say, come up with a plan and have short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, all right, how you communicate that, it's like, let's do one step at a time. Just come in, be comfortable. What would you like to know about the support and services that we provide? What questions might you have for us? What would you like to mostly get out of our time today?
Yeah, we were predominantly focused on those open-ended questions for the most part. Yeah.
Any unexpected learning?
Kate, did you want to answer that one? Did you have any
any unexpected learning? Not really. I just really focused on, as the support worker, just to build that trust and that rapport, because that was, in my humble opinion, the most important part of the whole consultation, and just reiterated that to me as well when we were going through that role play, that no matter how much time we're only delegated, you know, that hour generally, however long we've got, and that report process can take a very long time. So it was just reiterating that as an unexpected learning. So that was really good. If we had the right, the time, I think we would have smashed it as a role play. But yeah, but then there's no set amount of time. So
absolutely. Yeah. Don't underestimate the foundation work that you put in. The rest is all scaffolding. If you haven't got that, if you fix it too quick, it will fall over. If you go tick, 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 did that, got all of that, absolutely. The client is the one who drives this pace that you go, all right? Because otherwise it's you in that space, not them taking ownership, where it's client-centric. So it's all about where they're up to. You won't get to do your body of work unless you've got that foundation in. And it's definitely not a humble opinion, Kate. It's considered best practice in the sector. So well done. Very good. All right, who have I got? One other spokesperson. So we've had 3. We've got 2 more rooms.
I can go if you like.
Yeah, great.
So it was just Kim and myself in the room, and instead of doing the role play, I think we focused more on legal versus ethical outcomes. And I'm the kind of person that finds it difficult to do role plays. I can't imagine the other side unless I'm getting accurate responses. So I struggled with that. So it was more of a discussion. And basically the whole working on the rapport thing and building that trust was the most important thing at that moment that we both agreed on. And as to where that took us, then, you know, we would reach out for that support from our supervisors and say, this is what's happening. This is, you know, where we've gotten to so far. What sort of avenues can we take with this? Because that's where we were sort of left.
I love where you went with it. You worked within your professional boundaries. You followed your policies and procedures. Go to your line manager. I also want to give you some reflection back there, Kylie, because sometimes when you're being assessed by a trainer and you're doing a role play, it is exactly like a conversation. There is no, I'll be this and I'll be that. Some people want that, by the way. So sometimes if I'm in that space, especially like around workplace health and safety, I turn up with a high-vis vest and a hard hat. I'm totally into it, if the learner wants me to be totally into it. But some people, it's like, I can't do that. And Kylie, that is okay too. Thanks for saying that. Because it's like, don't tell me where I'll be the client and you the worker. I'm going to talk to you worker to worker. Tell me what you would do with that person. And you did just that. What you did was you prioritized the legal and ethical framework, which either or. You went down the legal framework, by the way. You wanted to build the trust and rapport, but you took your guidance from your line manager, which was the legal pathway. So that was great. Sometimes our role plays are just conversational. And so to help people feel comfortable with that, what we can do is I can say, let's just say you've got 5 clients or 3 clients, and it gives you 3 different scenarios, but you're going away, you've just won a cruise, you're going to have a wonderful time, you're gone for a week. All your other 311 clients on your caseload, because you're a really busy mental health worker, but you've got 5 that need to be seen. But now I'm going to hand them over to Yasmin, who's going to look after them for the week that I'm away. What do I need to do as duty of care for my clients? Is Yasmin, here are some that I couldn't reschedule. Would you be able to take them? You've already agreed. You've got collaboration in your peers. The legal, ethical thing is you've got a duty of care and you're doing a handover. What does Yasmin need? Yasmin needs me to say, look, Tom is really struggling. We do a check-in. My file notes are there. Okay, so Yasmin's going to go. Yep, I can see where your notes are. Okay, I understand. You're still in that building rapport stage by the look of it with Tom. So what would you like for me to have done while you're away with Tom? Well, I just want to make sure you continue to build on that relationship where they can trust coming in. They started to talk about maybe reducing social isolation and joining a youth group. And we've got one over there. I just wondered how you felt about maybe going with Tom to that first program, because he has heightened anxiety and walking through the door is tough, but once he's in there is kind of okay. And if it's in the scope of your role where your employer goes, yep, absolutely, Tom might find his own way there. Like, I'll meet you at such and such, rather than travel in the car with you, because that also sits around legal, ethical framework. If your policies and procedures say that you can travel with a young person, then you travel with them. Otherwise, you meet them there. I never travel with a young person, ever. Young people are very mobile. So I'll either do the work with them over the phone, or I'll say I'll meet you at Centrelink, or I'll meet you at your job agency, or I'll meet you at McDonald's. I'll give you something to eat. Let's have a yak. So Macca's therapy is absolutely normal in youth mental health crisis intervention, because a lot of young kids want to have food. And we're doing incidental work while we're doing soft work. So de-identify, nothing in that public space, but we're establishing rapport. How you going? We can talk about that when we get together. This is not a really good place. Teaching people what their own boundaries are and working inside our own. So that was great, Kylie. I liked where you went with that. And you raised the point that when you do your role plays to get assessed, that can be conversational as well. All you've got to do is say to the person you book it in with, or if you're doing that, give it context. Start off your own recording and say, what I've decided to do is make this conversational, because you have a list in front of you that says what the assessor is looking for, and build it into your role play. So as long as you show us your style as a worker, where you do your disclaimer, it's collaborative, it's working at that pace, client-centric, it's professional, you don't overpromise and underdeliver, you're building that relationship, you're nailing it. Go to the list. It gives you an instruction. Your assessor will be looking for this. And there's a list. That's how you know you've got it right. How you come at that could be that Brendan's a particular type of worker. I can still assess that if he comes at it his way. There is no cookie cutter worker, because there'll be some of our clients who'll go, you know what, I really like working with Jess. Or it's okay, Yasmin, I know you're going on holidays. I'll wait till you come back. And then Yasmin's going to go, well, if things get a little bit rough for you while I'm away, here's this card and here are all these 24/7 free call numbers. Okay, so you make a soft contract with them that's going to last for the week. But if you think that they're high risk, and you've got to come away from that conversation low, medium, or high risk. Okay, so do we agree? All right, would it be all right then if Vicky gives you a text message just to check in? You don't have to come and see her, but how about she gives you a text message and then we know that you're traveling okay? Yeah, that's good. Tom goes, yeah, I'll let you do that. Yeah, she can do that. All right, got consent. Away we go. Hey, Tom, just wondering how you are. So if there's no other things that are presenting in those file notes, he's still sitting at low risk but needs connection, because he's not great with change. It heightens his anxiety. Okay, but he might be interested in the program, and maybe you'll just meet him there. There's no other work, but where I will have to make sure my file notes say exactly what I did, all the factual, so that when Yasmin comes back from this amazing cruise, she can get an update, tell me how you went with my clients, and she'll be able to open up the file note and it'll be fact-based, not narrative. She might come to you and talk about it. Okay, we've got to have a break, or I'm opening it up to the room. Do you want to keep going, or would you like to have a break?
Can I talk about quickly about our group, and then we can go for a break?
Thanks, Brendan.
That's all right. So our group kind of took it a different way, only because I was the support worker as I'm studying for, and I couldn't stop asking close-ended questions. And the uncomfortableness was good. You know, it was very surprising where in that moment I just couldn't stop asking them. As someone with lived experience, you know, being on that other side now, and someone who I feel like I'm quite good at conversations, it didn't come naturally at all. So it was very interesting to observe that. And so we kind of stopped, and then did some reflection, you know, with Renee and got Kiva one. I know that's not your real name. But it was really cool to be able to stop and talk to the other two ladies, Karen. And then we swapped roles. So I assumed the position of the client and Renee assumed the position of the worker. And being able to observe her leading questions, open-ended questions, just naturally it brought out responses that you'd expect about, yep, you know, my friend's smoking weed. You know, what type of service, you know, I can't even do it now. I still can't say an open-ended question. But it was
what kind of service?
it was fascinating, just in that split second swapping over, and being able to observe just how easy it came to Renee, and not that it's hard for me or anything, but when you change that perspective a little bit, how easily it flows, and you're kind of reading and reacting. So I think it was more of a learning exercise in that regard, for all of us.
Unexpected learning came out great.
Yeah, and I think the discussion was really important between all three of us about, you know, it was learning for me, obviously, but getting the other two ladies' advice and opinions as well as mine. Being openly uncomfortable, I think, is really good as well.
Yes.
To observe that myself, going, I can't stop doing this.
Yeah.
So whilst we didn't really achieve the task, I think we achieved a lot in our own way. And sorry, ladies.
No.
After hearing the first one, we're like, oh no.
Oh shit, we totally misread that exercise.
Okay,
Whoops.
we're recording.
Oh, my apologies.
Can't drop words now. Now someone's got to go in and edit that out. So, but that's all right. I'll get the time we did that. So if we drop a word, Hader have to edit it out. If you have discussions that aren't relevant to the class, they all get cut. And those who don't join us in class actually get about 45 minutes of recording, and they miss out on the thing that they thought they were going to get out of classes. So that's okay. I dropped one last week, and I was method acting. I was the client, but he chose a word, and then I had to say, sorry, oops, it's me tonight. So, so yeah, perfectly okay, Karen. So there is a TEDx talk, or it's on a YouTube. I forget his name. I'm sorry. I'll find it. It's called My Advice Monster. I want you to look that up. That's your homework between now and next week. And I want to give you this acronym for WAIT. And it is Why Am I? So when we are doing open-ended questions with our clients, they should be talking as well. That self-reflection, each group came at this a completely different way. Look how complex it is. The story about the client, that changes, but your approach and how you do that is something that we repeat no matter what. So that's your practice standard. So, and My Advice Monster, Brendan, I think you'll find that a really valuable tool. So
awesome, thank you.
Gives you some strategies. It's like, oh, I'm qualified. I've got all the answers to everything. Just tell me and I'll fix it for you. It actually breaks it right down. So the open-ended questions is your formula in your spoken word as a support worker and your written work when you're doing your assessments. If it says do a case study or do research, if you can't answer all of those questions, who, what, how, when, where, why, you've missed something. That's your self-reflection over your own work. Let's take a quick break. 10 minutes and absolutely we will come back and I will wrap up your class. I have not opened one PowerPoint slide because I am not a chalk and talk trainer. And guess what? You've got those slides. So you don't want me reading them to you, but I can guarantee you, if I opened up those slides, we've already covered every single bit of content because it's relevant. Okay, so take a break. See you back here, 10 minutes, and we'll do our hit the home run and wrap up for you.
Can I ask a question?
Great, so welcome back. We have done a lot of professional standard practice tonight. It's all peer development. It's all practice standard. We've done a mini role play. We've sent people into breakout rooms. We've come back with specific tasks and had our focus. Even though people went into the breakout room with the one scenario, lots of other learning came out of that space. You all still hit the brief that I sent you in with. You all established rapport. You all had communication. It was perfectly okay that you didn't make a decision if your connection and engagement with the client was your purpose for being in there. So you did great tonight. So the language that we pulled out of tonight, we worked with some of the tools that we use. So you'll see that in recordings, I will just go in and delete anything irrelevant. So we worked with the framework. We did a check-in on our numbers, which was great. We did the framework, who, what, how, when, where, and why for our open-ended questions. We agreed that there is a time and a place for yes and no, closed ones, when we do a disclaimer, and we need to get consent to move forward. So then, we will just make sure we're sending out content relevant to this. Who, what, how, when, where, and why, open-ended questions, and the closed questions. Yes is consent. No is stop. You can't go any further until you check with that client. What would you like to get out of our time today? That's what client-centric is. So you move at the pace that the client wants to go. Some people chose their young person to be male, female, non-binary. Some chose the ages, like where Cass's team went, very young. So, but over the phone. Still had to look at the legal and ethical way around that. We're talking about illicit drugs, disclosed about another person. Will you provide early intervention prevention? Some of you did. What you must do and what you would like to do. And if you don't have all the information, so let's just say we take Cass's group. Mandy makes a phone call. Is it true? Is it valid? We don't know. This is Mandy on the phone. There's no way of checking other than, Mandy, are you okay? I'm really stressed about this. Okay. What do you think you might be able to do for Sarah? What would you like to do? You've called tonight, so you want to talk about it. Okay. How do you think I can help you with that? Well, she could, I don't want to get her into trouble. Okay. So she's talking to you about her feelings. She may encourage Sarah to call and talk about what's going on for her. But Sarah's got ambiguous loss. You know, she's got complicated grief. She's got fractured family and just lost a pet. They're high stress areas. She's right to call. You're right to be concerned. That's a lot for a young person to manage. We talked about people's EQ, their emotional quotient, with the young person still developing, or someone who is trauma affected. And if their trauma happened at 14, it is the 14-year-old making that decision. Their coping strategies is the 14-year-old. So I might work with someone in Gen Y, 34 years of age, but it'll be the 14-year-old that cannot cope. hasn't got the skills because they're frozen, because it's not yet had hope and healing. We don't know what we're dealing with when we're looking at someone's mental health. So a low EQ functions with blame, justify, deny, and quit. So we call that, like, you know, when you look at an iceberg, what we see on the top and what's happening below. So below the line, blame, justify, deny, quit. When we're working above the line, when we're having some self-reflection and some maturity in that conversation, as we know more, we grow more. So when we're in that space, you can hear it in the language. Sounds like there's a bit of blame in there. I just want to have a look at, do you feel something's unfair? That's how I would come at that. Okay. If it's justified, so you felt like, you know, there was some deserving, that something was happening there, we're going to just dig a little deeper and find out. But if they're sitting above the line, you'll hear it in their language and it will sound like this: I could have handled that better. It's I statements. Below the line, it's you, them. Maturity sounds like, I could have handled that differently. If I had another go, I think I'd do that. My parents have died, and I'm still dealing with the grief because I was abused as a kid. Okay, so what would you say to your dad if he was here today? I don't know. Okay, but we've got unhealed trauma. If it happened when they were a child, we've got complex PTSD. If it's never been worked through, and that's your work as a mental health support worker. So your legal and ethical framework is the core of what you must do and how you conduct yourself as a worker in that space. You'll have your overarching, which is the legislation, and then you will have your policies and procedures inside the organisation. You will have a position description that tells you what the scope of your role is. So I'm employed by HADA as a trainer and an assessor. Even though I can do counselling and crisis intervention work, I do not do that with learners because that is not what I'm employed to do. So even if I hired a doctor and put them on my team of 58, where we work in non-clinical mental health, crisis intervention, early intervention, prevention support in the court systems, housing and homelessness space. That's what I do when I'm not at HADA. So if I had a doctor and I wanted them to be a mental health support worker, they can do no clinical work because they were not hired. I want them for their knowledge, but they cannot work outside the scope of their role. You will be in breach of the legislation. They have to work within their position description. So when you look at, have I breached a legislation? If you do it intentionally, you have. If you do it and you didn't know, then that's a learning space. Perfectly okay. Are you protected is really the question as an employee you need to know. Karen.
I was just wondering what legislation in particular you were talking about then.
There's more than some. So it could be Child Safety Act. We used a young person.
Yeah.
Discrimination Act.
Yeah.
The Geneva Convention, the Rights of a Child. The Human Rights Commission, the Disability Act, the Child Safety Act in that one, up until the age of 18.
Are we expected to be, I guess we're expected to be familiar, but how familiar are we expected to be with all the legislation?
If you're, you've got to know that there is a legislation.
Yeah.
You've got to be working to policies and procedures in your organisation. A lot of people only do their PMPs when they first onboard so they can hurry up and get some work. But I encourage you to do ongoing professional development. And if you're in a good org, like we do one policy every week in a team meeting.
Yeah.
Our conversations. We have cake. I've got to tell you, there is cake, but every conversation is 95% professional content only, 5% cake.
Okay. Good.
Okay. So good practice, be really disciplined. It's the thing that if you're ever pulled in front of a court where they say, so you knew about it and you did it anyway. Did you sign your employment contract and accept your offer? Did you read the policies and procedures? I did. Then why did you do this? Legal and ethical framework sits around you as a worker, the protection of your clients, and the reputational damage of the organisation. Can people trust you? If the organisation is in breach of any of those, especially the Privacy and Confidentiality Act, then they can lose their funding. They can lose their accreditation, and rightly so. We work with vulnerable people. So privacy and confidentiality, that's your disclaimer first up. We are 2 minutes off the end of our class. I wanted to summarize. We looked at the EQ. We looked at people coming back and bringing back some really amazing stuff. Someone asked me again for my email in chat. The others I will remove. So vicky@haderinstitute.edu.au, and we are in a recording. And this information is for everybody who's not in class tonight as well, because they too are Hader learners. So we had a spokesperson, so we delegated to collaborate. That was amazing. Each of you took it somewhere else, and every one of you passed that role play because you all approached it at the pace. How you interpret that is you as a worker. If you miss something, we're going to give you specific feedback. If you do a role play and I'm in there, you're not getting out of that role play until you've passed. So I, as the client, I'm going to go, I was just wondering, so if I go and do this, what do you think the cops will do to me? And then I'm going to ask you as a worker, I'm going to get those answers out of you by giving you intentional interviewing questions so that I can find out, have you got the knowledge? Because sometimes the role play ends up getting in our way. I just want to know what you're like as a worker. How are you going to? You enrolled in this course because you believe you've got something to do, your body of work that you want to do in this space for whatever your why was when you first enrolled. That's what I want you to get back to collectively. Thanks, Brendan. Okay, I have to head off, put kids to bed and go to work. See you next week. Thanks, Renee. Thanks so much for your feedback tonight. Well done. Okay, anyone that's leaving, if you've got time, just drop a number in. So I'm dropping out at 8.5 tonight. That's me. And just put in so I know how you're traveling. If you feel you've lifted a little more, I'm out at a 7. Excellent. That's great, Karen. Very good. So you've got my email, and this is for our learners that are sitting in our recording space. You have a copy of these PowerPoint slides. When you go back over them, you'll know everything. There'll be links to legislation. There'll be what are the things we've got to consider. But tonight we spent a bit of time going back over role plays because that seemed to be what you wanted to have. And I did also a little bit of foundation. How do you get the most out of Hader and your trainers? Classes is one way, your learning guide is another. About 75% of what you get in classes needs to be relevant to your assessment, and about 25% you've got to go looking for yourself. And I do masterclass AI with my uni studies. I want to let you know I can show you how to get this stuff nailed very well. So happy to show you how to do that AI and still sit in that, is it legally and ethically appropriate to do your assessments? There's a certain amount of AI content. You cannot copy and paste. I'll always put it on the top. But if you ask me a question and say, I'm just not getting it, I'm going to give it back to you in simple, plain talk. And I'll do it in less than 5 minutes. And I can save you hours of Google search. But your learner's guide has links. So we've got to get into that space of AI, and you've got to frame it within a certain legislation. I put in Queensland law because that's what's relevant to me. And we brought in laws, workplace health and safety is one of those legislations, but psychological safety came in October 2023. And the only reason I like that stuff is I work in the courts and I'm ASD. So it's a system and it's got a pattern and I love it. So you've got your own learning style and your own worker style, and I think that's really important. So it is, I'm going to stay back for the learners that are in class if they would like to, which is most unusual. All my other classes know I jump out at 9 because it's a big day for them, but I also want to give people an opportunity to debrief about some of the content because we stayed on task and I made sure it did. But it's after 9. Anyone that wants to jump out absolutely can. Have a great week. I look forward to getting your emails saying I want to come in. Any question, always welcome. You can call Hader if you can't get anyone to pick up because they're really busy. Email them, lso@haderinstitute.edu.au, and they're just going to flick it to me. Here, Vicky, can you look after this learner? And so that happens all day, and I love it. I like talking, whether you're in my classes or not. So I'll finish up our night and say good night to those of us who are watching in recording, and we'll do our debrief.